Hi, I'm here to talk about taxes for a little bit, and I know how boring that can be, but I think it needs to be addressed. Our system doesn't seem to be working nearly as well as we like to pretend it is, and it might be time to try something new. I'll just bring up how the federal income tax system came to be. It was the 16th Amendment passed by Congress on July 2nd, 1909, and it was ratified February 3rd, 1913. That was actually when it was official, but we can date it further back to the Civil War when Congress passed the Revenue Act of 1861, and that was just to pay for war expenses. Before that, there was no income tax. Period. It was considered theft to just take money from someone's work. So right now we're using a progressive sliding scale. Basically, the more money you make, the more tax you pay of your out of your income each year. It's from 10 to 37% of your income could be paid, and that's just income. There's all sorts of other ways to make money besides income. You could sell things, you can trade things, things you own appreciate in value. A commodities tax could be up to 60% of the gained value. If you were sitting on a brick of gold and it went up in value by 100% in value, you might only get 40% of that value out of it because the government wants 60% of it. There's all sorts of weird stuff that has to happen to pay a 60% tax on that, but it is possible. So I've heard a lot of people on the right say we should be doing a flat tax. Basically, everyone pays X% out of their income across the board, no matter how much it is. And then there's also the argument that under a certain amount we wouldn't tax at all. I don't like that idea for a couple of reasons. And no, it's not just agreeing with the left that will say that it doesn't hurt the rich man nearly as much as me. Because that's actually the right's argument, is that it seems like you're punishing the successful by taxing them more. And if your argument is, well, it doesn't hurt him as much as it hurts me, that sounds like punishment if it's supposed to hurt them, right? The idea of a tax isn't to hurt people. It's to take what's a little bit extra from everyone, put it into a big pot to help everyone else. That's the idea. Now, whether or not that's the way you want a tax system to work, that's what we're doing. And that's the way this system's supposed to work. If you think we spend too much tax money, don't worry, I'm on your side. But yeah, exactly. We're not trying to hurt you. And federally, right now, if you're under 65 and you're filing jointly, you actually have to do a tax return if you hit $24,400. And this is a big issue I have with this because how does the federal government have any idea how much money that is in each individual state? Someone in West Virginia might be able to do a lot more with $24,000 than someone in Massachusetts. Because I know if you only make 24 grand a year in Massachusetts, between two people, you will both die. Whether you're going to freeze to death in the winter or you're going to starve to death, you will die. You will not survive without help if you're only bringing in 24 grand in Massachusetts. In pretty much any part of the state, especially the coastal parts. So what's the federal government doing taking 10% of that? That's ridiculous. Okay, now, this is where minimum wages come in. States set minimum wages saying we're going to, take into account all of that kind of stuff. But the mass minimum wage is $12.75 an hour. At 40 hours a week by 52 weeks a year, you're only bringing in $26,520, which is still more than that 24K. So you're gonna be taxed at 10% and pay $2,652 a year of tax on a minimum wage job in Massachusetts, and you will die. And you can make the argument we need to raise minimum wage. Well, let's look at my argument. Let's change the federal tax on that so the federal government's not taxing someone who's in abject poverty with that amount of money here because the guy over here can survive on it. There's wealthy areas where you cannot survive on that much money, and I'm sure most of people watching this probably live in an area where you will die if between two people you bring in what on Massachusetts minimum wage. If you only bring in $26,000 between two people, you won't survive. It's not, and whew. All right. Sorry, I got off on a rant. But yeah, I'm with the libertarians on the income tax idea. Basically, I see it as theft for exactly the reason I stated was the federal government has no idea how much actual money $24,000 is in a different place. and I'm referring to money separate than currency. Now, money has purchasing power. Currency is a representation of it. We keep hearing tax the wealthy as the way to solve this problem. Okay, how? Increase their income tax? Jeff Bezos isn't getting paid. I mean, he's getting paid a wage, yes, but that's not where his wealth is. He might make a couple $1,000,000 a year, and that sounds like a lot of money, but when you're worth $150 billion, his paycheck is very little of his worth. His worth is Amazon itself and everything else he's got his hands and fingers into. You put your wealth, your worth is in things. It's not actual currency. It's not a stack of cash. It's not even a bank account. Jeff Bezos doesn't have $150 billion. He doesn't have a Scrooge McDuck style money bin. He's swimming around in gold doubloons. He owns a bunch of different stuff. So, and he can hide his money better than you can. Trump actually addressed this a lot in his time in office, but he kind of ranted and raved a lot, and it was tough to pick out the real stuff versus the crazy. Don't care where you stand on that one either. But you have to realize when you say tax the wealthy, how are you going to tax them? If you raise their income tax rate, exactly, Jeff Bezos doesn't, he only gets paid X amount, you know what I mean? So then you say, okay, well then we'll tax the company or tax his net worth. That's the big one lately. Is especially AOC is saying it. Well, like a one-time tax will take 50% of everything of what they're worth. How is Jeff Bezos going to come up with $75 billion to hand to the U.S. government? Like really, he doesn't have that kind of cash sitting around. He doesn't have that bank account. It's Amazon itself. So he would have to sell off stock to come up with this money. Okay, now the founder and CEO of a company starts selling off $75 billion worth of his company so he can pay his taxes or go to prison. That declines the value of that company, which means he now has to sell more stock off to be able to come up with what he owes. All right. Now, the first issue I'm going to bring up is your 401k just disappeared because every one of these wealthy companies that's worth a ton of money that has to sell off of their stock, they're going to sell it off, plummet the price of every major stock out there, the Dow Jones, NASDAQ, Amazon, Microsoft, Folgers, whatever it is, not Samsung, but now all your retirement funds that you've been saving for all these years just disappeared because you just wiped out the value of everything that you are invested in, which a lot of people seem to think about a lot. So obviously you can't do that. Obviously, no one that would just, oh my God, and then what are you going to do with the money? They're going to hand it to you, and you're just going to turn right back around and hand it right back to Sam Walton at Walmart and Jeff Bezos at Amazon. And you have to also think about, what do you consider wealthy? For example, do you own your home? Do you own a car? Do you have a swimming pool? Do you have a couple apple trees? Maybe some investments in a couple different businesses, a retirement fund. Maybe you have been slowly buying gold coins and silver coins for 30 years. You have to put all of that worth into one ball. And then when all of a sudden you realize that you're worth almost $1 million and you didn't realize it because you're living paycheck to paycheck. It happens. And then they say they want $500,000 from you. You go, I have about $10,000, I mean, to a lot of people, if you have a month's pay saved up in one account, a lot of people call that rich. And a lot of people consider that utterly unprepared. Where's the line for the wealthy? Can you afford to take 9 months off of work and not starve to death? A lot of people will consider you wealthy, and you are the one who should be taxed. All right. Now, here's the thing, is that when we go ahead, and now we're going to say, all right, well, we'll tax the businesses then. The businesses bring in the big money. They're the ones that are actually worth the money, not the people that own these businesses, because they don't actually have that money. That was an idea. It's not a terrible idea. But the business is making money by selling something, whether it's a product or a commodity or a service or any, even physical labor. It's always sales. That's how transactions happen. You don't buy anything else. No one pays for anything else besides buying something. It's sales, and that's always where the tax ends up getting paid. It always gets passed on to the next person because you want to make your money. You're not going to get taxed on it. You're going to make that guy pay the tax. Just like when you bought a car, the car company didn't pay the tax for you, did they? No, you did. And in everything, when you pay your sales tax, Amazon could have eaten that, but no, they added it on to the cost of stuff, just like everyone else does. It gets passed on to the consumer. It always does, every single time, everywhere. Now, my idea, my suggestion, is we abolish the income tax altogether and go to just transaction tax, basically only on trade, actual sales, and make it so that the more essential what you're buying is, the less tax you pay on it. If you're buying a pickup truck so that you can get your equipment to your work site and go to work every day, and you're buying an American-made truck, you're contributing to society with this purchase by buying an American product because the workers are getting paid from it, and using it to do work in your community, which is benefiting the community, the nation in general. Now, the more extravagant you get, the more fancy you get, the more tax you'll end up paying. I'm just using vehicles as an example. We can go food if you want. So you don't need that. You need that pickup truck, and you need that weld machine. You need the plumbing tools. You need the carpentry tools. You need the ladders and all that stuff because you're a general handyman, and you're self-employed. You're out there making a couple bucks in your community. Everything you buy that's just for work won't be taxed. But you had a couple really good years and you decide you want to buy yourself that Mustang GT 500 that you've been looking at for 10 years, you know? So you go out and you buy yourself a really nice, fancy car that costs you, I have no idea what one cost. We'll say $85,000. That's a luxury item. It's unnecessary. It's not going to benefit anyone really, except for you. It's just so you can feel good. You're going to pay the tax on that, and it might be extreme because it's so extravagant. Who needs a car that can do 0 to 60 under 4 seconds? You might pay almost 100% tax on that. But when you go grocery shopping and you're buying meat and potatoes, you're paying 0 tax. You want to get, today you feel like you might want to eat a filet mignon. I don't know, just make an example. It might be at 5% tax because it's more than you basically need, but it's not super extravagant, But if you're living in San Francisco and you want a Maine lobster, we got to fly this thing across the country alive so you can boil it alive. And they only come from Maine, obviously, so it's not an infinite amount of them, or I should say the finite amount is tangible to the point that it costs more money than other stuff. This isn't a luxury item, it's paying the butt, but you are still employing American people to do this versus shipping in sashimi from Japan. So the idea basically is to keep the tax on extravagance, because the wealthy are the ones that pay for the extravagant things. The average American doesn't have a whole lot of fancy stuff. You might have an extravagant television, but you don't mind paying a 10% tax to have a nice TV in your house because that's going to be your main form of entertainment. You're not flying to Europe, over the weekend. You're not doing what Leonardo DiCaprio did and fly around the world to celebrate New Year's 3 or 4 times the same within 24 hours. Because that's the kind of stuff we want to tax, because that's ridiculous. And the more ridiculous it is, the more tax it would pay. If you're buying a Ferrari, there might be over 100% tax on it because you're not benefiting even workers buying it, American workers buying that. And you're not, what are you going to do with that thing besides, unless you're a professional racer? That might be different. We could figure something out for that if you were a professional race car driver. I don't know. I think this is an interesting idea. I think I'd like to hear more ideas similar to this, ways to expand upon the more essential what you are purchasing, the less tax you will pay, down to none. Because you and I aren't buying extravagant things. We're not doing the ridiculous things. And since the consumer is going to pay the tax, why don't we put the tax on who's going to purchase that, basically? Because the wealthy are the ones buying the fancy cars. You know, you and I might go and buy a fancy car because we really want it, but we worked 20 years to save up for that car. You can't just go buy one, you know, like Elon Musk. And I'm not picking on any of those guys. Good for them. They've been successful. But if you genuinely want to pass the tax on to the wealthy, you need to start taxing the things that they're buying versus the things that they're selling. That's what it comes down to. Because, yeah, if you're going to buy a $300 million yacht, maybe you should be paying more than a 10% sales tax on that, you know? Versus the fisherman buying a fishing boat. Please give me feedback. I think you understand where I'm going with this. If you can help me piece this together, make more sense, I'd love it. Any major obstacles you see, I'd love that, and especially if you have an idea how to overcome it too. Anyway, good luck all. Thanks.